Hello, Frameless Lab. Hello, symposium attendees. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Michaela Holland. I'm an immersive interactive storyteller, and this workshop is going to be focusing upon narrative, experience design, points of view, and we're going to have a lot of fun today. If you came as you are, awesome. If you want to come with a little bit of extra, though, this workshop, we will be using one chair, a chair. I will put it into the chat. So if you have a chair, great. You are ready to go. If you would like to bring a partner in to help you or someone to participate in this workshop with you, this is more of an immersive interactive workshop. So if you've got a child who's on lunch break, if you've got a partner in the room who's been getting on your nerves, you can bring them in and have them help you participate in this workshop. It's going to be a little more hands-on. So a chair and a partner. If you have a chair, ideally it's one that does not roll, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for attending. I would love to know where everyone is coming from. So go ahead and drop into the chat where you're coming from and what brings you here. So today I'm coming from Florida. Usually I'm based in New York, but I'm down in Florida for some work and some personal items. So I'm currently in Florida. Feel free to just let me know where you are coming from. Anyone looking?
As a reminder, Michaela, they cannot type as attendees in the chat. They can only use the Q&A.
Yes.
So
in the Q&A, I see Ohio, I see Rochester. Anyone from the West Coast coming in? Let's see if we have any West Coasters. I see Georgia. Thank you for joining us, Georgia.
We have an Oakland, California in the chat.
There we go. There's a West Coast. West Coast, Best Coast, East Coast, Beast Coast, as they say. We're going to just get started. I'm just going to jump through. I want to let you know that these first few slides, they're the most talkative slides I have. So they're going to be the ones that I'm going to be talking the most. As soon as we're done with those few slides, we will be on to the more interactive part of this workshop, I promise. So a little bit about me. I worked with Life VR in 2016 through 2018, helping them on a lot of different virtual reality, augmented reality, as well as just immersive interactive experiences. I worked with organizations in media like Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated, People Magazine, lifestyle publications like Coastal Living, Southern Living, Sunset, and was able to do a lot of really fun media-related, journalism-related, storytelling-related experiences and projects. After I left Life VR to continue, I created my first immersive interactive experience. It was sort of my directorial debut, and that was called Face to Face, and that went on to Sheffield Doc Fest. And that was actually an installation. We built a physical world for people to come into. We built a dining room, we built a bathroom, and then we built a kitchen. And this was to showcase a life of a woman who is an incredibly resilient woman who is overcoming gun injury. We built VR headsets from scratch, and in one of the rooms, you put on the VR headset and you watched a 12-minute long VR documentary. In the other rooms, you got to play with escape room-like experiences where if you opened the drawers, you would see certain parts of her life that you might not have found. We call those Easter eggs in video game industry. And then in the final room, we had interactive video, so branching narrative video, which was really fun and exciting. And at the end, you as a participant got to leave a note, whether that was an audio, a video, or a written note for the woman. So yeah, this is a little bit about me and my work. I work a lot in journalism, a lot in documentary, but I'm really passionate about creating things that people can come into, creating things that people can tangibly touch or tangibly be a part of. My current project is called The Tao. This is a 360 film. It's animated. There's no dialogue. It's really accessible. And it's about children in the Philippines that have to swim to school. I like to say it's like a Pixar related short. So it feels very much like childlike and Pixar related. And this project is really important to me because not only did we tell the story about people and children in the Philippines, but we actually also hired Filipino animation studio and a Filipino score composer to tell that story as well. So as a producer, as a director, as a creative, it's important to me not only the type of experience we're creating for the audience, but also the type of experience we're creating with the team, whether that's in hiring, whether that's in communication, timelines. So to me, to create really amazing experiences, it's holistic. It's not only in the entertainment or the journalism world for audience members, but it's also for team members in the tech world, in the education world, in the health and care and startup world, because every day we wake up, we're experiencing something. And why can't that experience be holistic? Why can't that experience be seamless? Why can't that experience be robust? So these are some clients I've worked with as a consultant. Again, this is just what we like to call in journalism building ethos. This is just to make sure you all don't think that I'm some crazy person asking you to do a bunch of crazy stuff. So I appreciate you all taking the time to listen to me rant about the things I've done. So let's go into the workshop. Today, like I said, we're going to be using a chair, ideally one that does not roll or spin. Optional would be a partner. Before we get started, I'd like to set up a really intentional environment. So I don't know if anyone here has done theater, but we like to say something in theater called yes and. That means we're never saying this is something I don't want to do and I say no and I reject it completely. So a yes and environment is really to say, hey, this is a little uncomfortable. Hey, this might not be something I do on a day-to-day basis, but yes, it's uncomfortable and maybe I'll take a step away. Or yes, it's uncomfortable and I'm going to try it. Or yes, it's not the traditional thing and maybe I'll get my kid to do it with me. So again, just thinking of this as a yes and environment. Some interactive elements. So I don't believe we're going to have the raise hand here. We're going to actually be using the Q&A. It's a little bit different for every webinar. So using the Q&A, you're going to let our moderator, Susan and Emily, you're going to let them know when you would like to share. And once you are given share capabilities, you will then be able to either showcase yourself on video or showcase yourself using audio. It will be volunteer. No one will be called out. No one will be forced to do anything they don't want to do. I want this to feel like a safe, exploratory playtest environment. Awesome. Last big talking slide, and then we're going to get into it. All right. So again, thank you so much for being with me here as we get through these little sort of onboarding moments. So language is really important to me because I know we can all interpret words in different ways. And I want to make sure that for this workshop, we're all thinking about words in a very specific way. This does not mean this is the dictionary text message way that we should always be thinking about these words. It's only to apply to this workshop. So for me, today in this workshop, the word narrative, it means a story we tell not only ourselves in our brains, but also about other people in the world. So the narrative I have right now, I'm sitting on a brown couch. There's this weird piece of art behind me. I'm trying to be really engaging because Zoom is a really difficult platform to get people to listen to you because most people have a lot of Zoom fatigue. Maybe there's someone else in the room with me. They're sitting on this bed that's to my right. Who is that person? What are they doing? Are they on their phone? Are they wearing a mask? Are we safe? It's COVID. Are we 6 feet apart? This is a narrative. I'm telling a story about myself, and I'm telling a story about someone else in the existence of the world. Points of view. So points of view is when two people's narratives clash. Clash can usually have like a negative connotation. I like to think of it more like molecules, like they clash and bounce off of one another because they're existing in the same sort of realm. So for example, I'm sitting on this couch. I have this point of view. I'm trying to be really engaging because the Zoom screen is so hard to make sure people feel like you're speaking to them. But there's someone else sitting to the right of me. And maybe they feel like I'm being too loud. Maybe they feel like I'm being too talkative. Maybe they feel like I'm doing too much. I'm being too extra. These are two narratives clashing because they have a narrative about themselves. They're just trying to be on their phone, doing their thing. Maybe they're answering emails and I'm over here being loud and obnoxious. Narratives clashing in space. Nothing wrong with it. Nothing negative, nothing positive. Just two narratives moving in and out of one another. An experience. So a lot of people like to use this word. What is an experience? What are we building an experience? To me, an experience is just a memory that's created from many narratives we tell ourselves in the world. I wake up every morning, I brush my teeth because it's good to have clean breath. Maybe one morning I forget to brush my teeth and someone hands me a Tic Tac. And oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. That's a memory that's been created in my brain for days to come. All I can think about is that time that stranger offered me a Tic Tac because I forgot to brush my teeth that morning. A memory created from many narratives that we have in our day-to-day lives. Last but not least, a transformative experience. I was so embarrassed by the fact that that person had to offer me a Tic Tac. I never, ever leave my house without brushing my teeth now. So this memory has changed my behavior. And that is how I go from creating experience to creating a transformational experience. It goes from being a memory to a memory that changes the way I behave. Maybe you took your child to Disneyland, or maybe you've been to Disneyland and you saw for the very first time a Star Wars character and you're like, what is this Star Wars thing? And then you started watching the Star Wars movie, and then you started buying the Star Wars merchandise. This went from an experience to a transformational experience, because now Disney has $600 worth of your money. So there's many different ways we can think about these words, but this is sort of how we're thinking about them today. All right, I'm gonna just take a moment, get ourselves into the space. Does anyone have any questions? I'm looking at the Q&A. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say? Any thoughts? Oh, wow, Dory from Asia. It must be like 12 a.m. in the morning over there. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Uganda. Any questions, comments, concerns? We're ready to jump into it? Awesome. Okay, so this is our first prompt. I would like for us to all just take a minute to kind of shake out our jiggles and wiggles. I feel a little anxious. I've been sitting down all day. I just kind of have like a lot of energy I need to get out. So everyone take a big deep breath in through their nose. Sit up maybe a little bit taller if you're on the chair already, and let go of your breath. Maybe roll your shoulders around, move your neck around. We're going to get into the immersive and interactive part of this experience. So I'm going to turn off my video. My fellow panelists, feel free to do the same. And I'm just going to be prompting us using my my words. So give me 1 sec. Let me find my video. All right. So prompt 1 is position yourself on the chair. So whatever that means to you, however you want to interpret that, go ahead and just position yourself on the chair. And if you don't have a chair, no worries. You can kind of do and use any sort of prompt you have. I'm sorry, any sort of prop you have in your space. So go ahead and position yourself on the chair. Beautiful. When you find a place, go ahead and find stillness. Go ahead and close your eyes and begin to tell yourself a narrative. Find things in your space that's informing your narrative. Maybe it's the way the chair feels. Maybe it's how warm or cold you are in the space. Maybe it's a noise you're hearing. And go ahead and take 2 deep breaths in through your nose for me and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. All right, and I'm going to turn my video back on. Having a little bit of trouble, give me 1 moment. All right, so I interpreted position yourself on the chair like this. Make sure you can see me in this video. And the narrative I told myself was, I have a bunch of friends over. This is a time pre-COVID. We're all sitting here. I can smell popcorn. Maybe someone's popping popcorn. And I know we're about to watch a movie. But I think my friends and I are arguing about which movie to watch. Our narratives are clashing in the space all at once. Someone wants to watch a rom-com. Someone wants to watch a sci-fi. And guess what? The couch is full. This chair is a couch. It's full. So I have to sit on the floor, which is fine. But the floor is a little bit cold, so I might need a blanket a little bit later. So that was a bit of the narrative that I created for myself with this chair. Now, I'm assuming some of you probably just sat on your chair. That's totally fine. It was a very open-ended prompt. Position yourself on the chair. Would anyone else like to share a little bit about how they positioned themselves on the chair and a little bit about the narrative they told themselves? Maybe they created a point of view that clashed with their point of view. Go ahead and let me know using the Q&A, and then one of my facilitators will allow you to share either your video or your audio. So I'll just take a moment and allow anyone to share. If you don't feel comfortable sharing on video or audio, you can also share on the Q&A. You can just type on the Q&A what you saw, what you found, what you felt. Any sharing? Elizabeth said, my chair was really comfortable and it made me remember when I got it. Elizabeth, do you want to go a little bit deeper into that? Made you remember when you got it? Was there a specific experience or memory connected to that story? You can go ahead and type that on the chat, or if you would like to share, you can just let someone know I'd like to share with my video or my audio, and then they will give you access to doing that. Eloise, I believe I'm saying your name correctly. She says, I was thinking it was weird that I'm alone and I'm with other people at the same time. Yeah, exactly. You know, it's sort of like when you have a black and a white circle, you position someone in the black side and you position someone on the white side of the circle, and someone says it's black and someone says it's white, and then you position someone in the middle and they're like it's black and white. Some people would say I'm alone right now, right? Because I'm alone in this space. Or some people would say there are other people here because we're all on Zoom. There's 53 people here. Are you alone? Are you truly alone? That's a great thought. Lauren sat up straight, then slouched again and tried to convince themselves that they were not nervous about the math quiz this afternoon. Yeah, something coming down the pipeline, something in the future, something that you know is going to happen can affect your narrative in the present moment, like a math quiz. Elizabeth, if you'd like to share with audio, you are more than welcome to. Go ahead. Oh, is audio? I do not hear you. Let us know if you can hear us. Paul created a world. He said that he was visualizing gliding over a shallow reef in the ocean, and he was trying to work out the names of all the different shades of blue. So, Paul, because it was a shallow reef, did you have any other characters in that vision? Did you see fish? Did you see eels? Did you see stingrays? Any sort of other sort of narratives that might have looked up at you and they would have said, what is that thing gliding over me? Was there any points of views that were clashing? Can you hear us, Elizabeth?
I can, yes. Are you talking to me now?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad you got your audio working. Go ahead. Share with me the narrative about when you got your chair.
Oh yeah, well, I don't know if it's that great of a story, but I was at an antique market and these people had restored this chair, and I didn't 100% want the chair, but they hadn't really sold anything and it was kind of a cool chair, so I bought it and I've never sat on it. And so I went and I sat on it because it doesn't have wheels like my chair at my desk. And I was amazed at how comfortable it was. And it was just completely built differently from any other chair. And it made me remember that day. I was surprised at how vividly I remembered. It was almost about to rain. The concrete had that smell, like it had sprinkled a little bit, and you get that, that cement smell. And it was just not any particularly astounding memory, but it was very clear to me.
But clarity is just as important in any narrative. You could have the most epic story, but it can be really unclear for your audience to follow. And that, to me, might not be as successful as having a very simple moment, just like you described to us, in a very clear way, the about to rain, the smell, the multi-sensory that you built for us. And it's simple, right? You are going to go find this chair you may or may not buy. There's obviously a narrative of someone saying, I want to sell this woman or this person this chair, and someone else saying, I may or may not want this chair. But it was really clear for me to follow. It was very well articulated, and simple is sometimes better. Clear is better than crazy epic, especially when we get into the world of design and interactivity. Some people just need simple and clear. They don't need all the bells and whistles. So I thought that was great. Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so if anyone else wants to share on the chat, feel free to. I'm going to give us all about another minute if anyone else would like to finish typing, and then we're going to move on to the second prompt of the workshop. I see Aaron says their chair is an old mid-century modern chair, reupholstered, very cool. It was a chair their husband always sat in. But since it was redone, now it is theirs. The place where they read, they write, and teach. Wow, it has history for both of us. I love that. What does that mean too about like the transfer of ownership, right? At one point in time, maybe Erin felt that she did not have ownership of this chair's narrative because it was mainly a chair that her husband used every day. But now it's been repurposed, and now that she has had long-standing narratives and memories in that chair, it is now been sort of transferred the ownership of that narrative to her, which I love. Thank you so much, Erin. All right, we're going to move on to the second prompt. The second prompt is going to be position yourself next to the chair. So just like I did before, I'm going to turn off my video. And feel free to just begin to move around your chair, maybe shake out your hands, maybe shake out your legs. Maybe you've been sitting all day. Maybe this is the first time you've stood up since 10 a.m. Eastern time. So feel free to take a moment, do whatever you need to do, maybe take a little stretch. And then go ahead and move yourself around your chair. Find a position that is next to your chair. When you start to settle into that position, go ahead and start to close your eyes. Take 2 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And go ahead and begin to think about that narrative. Think about points of view of maybe other people that may or may not be in the room, but you can create them being in the room with you in this moment. Think about what your personal narrative is. What is your experience happening in the world right now? It can be fictional, it can be creative, it can be very linear and very to what's happening right now in your world. Use elements like your senses. What are you smelling? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? Is it hot? Is it cold? Maybe you're building a world around you. Awesome. Now go ahead and gently open your eyes. So my position, and I will share first just as an example so no one else feels that I'm asking them to do something I wouldn't be willing to do. My position was a little different. I was a little stuck, so I move this over a little bit. I was positioned next to the chair. My hand was on the arm of the chair, and I actually was like a ballerina. This was my bar, my ballet bar. And I was in what we call first position, and I was doing pliés, and I was using this chair to stretch, and I was breathing. And suddenly the teacher came over, and the teacher said, "Michaela, you're supposed to be in jazz class." So I ran away from the ballet bar and I ran into jazz class because I was in the wrong dance class because I realized I was in dance class with 3-year-olds at the ballet bar. But just because I'm short, I didn't even notice. So that's a little bit about the narrative I made. I was in ballet. I was next to my chair as a ballet bar. I thought I was in the right class, and then I realized I was in the wrong class. So I had to leave and go to jazz class. So it's a little bit about that. Feel free, just like we did last time, share what you saw, what you felt, what you created in your mind as a narrative, what you saw as a point of view of other people. Maybe those points of views clashed. Maybe I had a transformational behavior here, a transformational experience because I was in the wrong class. So I ran out of class. That's a change in my behavior. I was dancing, I was in class, and then I had to leave class all of a sudden. Maybe your narrative has that shift in behavior as well. I'm going to go ahead and look at the Q&A and see if anyone shared anything. And if anyone would like to share either video or audio, feel free to let us know in the Q&A. And one of our moderators, that's the word, one of our moderators will give you attendee ability, which will allow you to share. Patrick He's getting a little meta with us, and he says he's thinking about how this was not a chair before they sat in it and before they called it a chair. That's true. What we call things and how we use things is sort of what defines those things. But narratively, this does not have to be a chair. This could be something different. You know, this could be a trampoline for children who like to jump on it. This can be a bed for someone who wants to lay down on it. Really, what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a different relationship with something that's usually very mundane in our space. Something we sit on, something we watch Zoom videos on, something we type on, or our laptops on. We're trying to sort of recreate that relationship. Eloise said, behind my chair is a green screen. So I got up and walked behind the green screen, and it was just like hanging in the wings before going on stage. That's awesome. I love that. I love that. Something that was next to your chair also created that memory. Eloise, do you have experience in the theater? Do you know what that feels like to be in the wings before walking on stage? Do you get nervous? Do you pace?
Absolutely. I was a sign language interpreter for a long time and did a lot of theatrical interpreting. But also for many of us who are educators and people who do presentations, I still get stage fright.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels just like that, being on the wings and before going in front of people you don't know for the first time and finding out that they're friends and they're cool.
Yeah.
There's that feeling always.
And isn't that interesting how the sort of physical architecture of the space informs something, you know, because there was sort of this sheet, sort of you felt something next to you, or maybe you felt a little cramped and you felt like you were between two things. It brought you back to that moment where you felt that way before. So physicality of space really creates narrative, whether that's how we're designing something in VR or AR, whether that's the way we set up a meeting room. I know for a lot of teachers, I'm sure also the ways when you used to have class in person, the way you would set up your classroom. There's such a different configuration that happens when I'm sitting in a circle with people versus sitting in rows with people versus sitting at very long desks. And sort of the architecture of the way we create space informs experience. And I think that's a very interesting sort of idea that we don't explore enough sometimes. You know, if we want a space to feel more equal, why don't we set up the chairs to be like in a circle? Or if we want a space to feel more like one person at the front, we should set it up with more rows. But do we make those decisions consciously? Anyone else like to share anything? Any other thoughts with the way they were positioned next to their chair? I know sometimes this feels like we're just playing play pretend, or we're pretending something, but you know, I think something we're forgetting a little bit because we're all kind of in this world of what's happening and maybe being in a square box is that we're forgetting that we can pretend. We're forgetting that our brains are so expansive that we can build narratives in our mind. Again, this idea that this chair can become so many other things. And I think when we get into that stuck rut in creativity, or we get into that weird rut with our teams, whether that's internal or external, we forget that we can sort of play our way out of problems, or play our way out of obstacles, or play our way out of differences and misunderstandings. And really narrative is just a form of telling a story about yourself, and marketing is how that narrative is being perceived by audiences. You know, a lot of companies put out a lot of money in advertisement because they want to tell a story about a product. But if the audience doesn't understand that story, they probably won't go buy that product. But maybe the story is so compelling that the audience is suddenly buying that product off the shelf. So narrative and story, it's the same idea too with apps. Oh, we have this great app. We want to put it out to the world. And this is what we want to do with this app. And you put it out into the world and people are like, I'm confused. I don't know what this app is supposed to do. Or, oh my gosh, this app is incredible. I can call a car and it'll come pick me up, or I can order food and the food will come to my door. That's a narrative. That's a relationship. That's a point of view you create with someone else in this world. Paul says they're focused on their rug and the pressure of its texture, imagining the pattern had copied itself into its palms. Yeah. So that feeling of that touch, of that rug? How is that in relationship to your chair? And also, what is that saying about the power dynamic between you and the rug? You're applying pressure to the rug, and you're hoping that that rug will imprint onto your hand. Do you think that's an equal power relationship? Do you think that's an unequal power relationship? Is one higher than the other? Tell me a little bit about that. Let's explore that a little bit more. Does anyone else have any thoughts about like sort of the power dynamic that they're playing with themselves, with their chair, with maybe their partner in the space? Laura says that she faced, or they faced, the way, the other way. So instead of facing the screen, it felt very weird to be at a different vantage point. Yeah, a different point of view. And it made them think about the view their students have when the office on Zoom. And then why, yeah, we are all creatures of habit. Why do we never change it up? Why do we always constantly show the same box over and over again on Zoom? I agree. I think that's a great finding, just changing your position slightly. And sometimes that's all it needs. Like, oh, we're having an issue, we're having a problem with this experience design. Maybe it's this big app. Maybe it's this big VR. Well, maybe we just need to shift the point of view of someone so that it feels more comfortable. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go on to our next prompt. So prompt number 3 is going to be position yourself close to the chair. I make these prompts very vague on purpose because they're for you to interpret, they're for you to be able to find and figure out what you would like to do with them. So just like I did before, I'm going to stop my video. I'm going to give everyone a moment here of silence. Maybe you're enjoying exactly where you're seated, or maybe you're enjoying exactly how you were seated, how you were positioned before. So if you are enjoying yourself there, maybe all you have to do is move 2 inches or 2 feet, or maybe it's the way your hand is sitting on the chair versus your legs on the chair. Go ahead and just position yourself close to the chair. You don't have to be touching it, but if that feels good, you can touch the chair, maybe with your toes, maybe with your nose. All right, now once you find a place of stillness, go ahead and just gently close your eyes. Take 2 deep breaths. Go ahead and release that first deep breath. In through your nose, out through your mouth. And a second one for me, in through your nose, out through your mouth. And clear your thoughts, clear your mind, and start to just find whatever's coming to you first. What sensation, what feeling is creating the narrative you're building in your mind? Are there other people with you in that space? Other characters, other individuals? How are their points of views clashing with yours? How is their narratives clashing with your narrative? Maybe start to think about power dynamics. Is that person on the other side of the room? Is that person underneath you? Is that person above you? What is that saying about your relationship to that person? Sorry about that. Go ahead and gently open your eyes. Once you have a really crystallized narrative, it can be something very simple. It does not have to be super crazy, super extravagant. Awesome. And I'm going to turn my video back on. And so again, I'm going to share my narrative because I would never want anyone to feel like I'm asking them to do something that I would never do. And I'll show you what I did. So I sat here, I was positioned towards my chair, and I was imagining that I was watching a DJ and I was at a concert. So the DJ was up on this platform and I was cheering this DJ on to keep playing music. And maybe I was dancing when I had other people in the audience. Maybe this was a solo. But that DJ, because they were above me, there was a dynamic happening. That DJ was sharing some sort of sound or music with me. And I was giving them back, letting them know that I was enjoying that music, enjoying that sound. So there's definitely something here about the way that they're positioned up and above me and the way I'm positioning down below and the way I'm sort of putting my energy up to this DJ that I feel is a very specific part of the way our narratives are clashing or the power dynamic we're playing. Would anyone else like to share? Go ahead and type on the Q&A. If you would like to share with your video or share audibly, you are more than welcome to. Just let one of our moderators know on the Q&A chat. I'm just going to call Mitchell from our last prompt while I wait for anyone who wants to share on the chat to share. Mitchell stood behind their chair and thought of times when their family would meet in their father's office. Yep. Then I decided the office disappear and fall through the sky. Mitchell, I'd like to just sort of tease out some stuff you said. You said something about your family meeting in your father's office. How was your family positioned? Was your father sitting in his desk? Was your family around your father? Was your family sort of huddled at the door, not wanting to disturb your father? What sort of positions or architecture of bodies in the space? How did that inform sort of the power dynamic, and power not being a bad thing or a good thing? Again, just this idea of something that we're playing with. How did that inform sort of your family dynamic? Was it, you know, oh, dad's busy, we're just waiting for him to be done with the call, and the minute he's done with the call, we're going to burst through and say hi to him? Did you ever sit in your dad's chair behind the desk? Did that make you feel a certain way? Maybe you pretended you were being like your dad and working. Like, what can you, if you feel comfortable sharing on the chat, just what that made you feel like or what that was like for you? Do we have anyone else that would like to share? I'm sort of going back and forth between the Q&A and seeing if I missed anything. All good. I see Miles. Miles says they are wearing wired headphones. And so as they moved further from the desk and the laptop, the more strained their head had. And there was a humming of LED white lights and above, and it made them feel wired in. That's great. I love this narrative you're creating. So sort of this feeling of pulling. So Miles, where was that power dynamic? Were you pulling away from the wire of your headphone because you wanted to escape? Were you pulling away just because you wanted some space? Was it pulling you back? What was sort of that dynamic playing out? You were feeling wired in. What is that saying about that narrative? Why would that wire want to hold on to you? What narrative do they have? Why would you want to get away? What is that point of view clashing in space and time? All right, we are almost done with our workshop today. Before we continue, I just want to say we're adding a new layer. We're sort of speaking about it, but I just want to make sure that I discuss this new layer of power and dynamic and relationships. So it's really easy to be like, I have a narrative about myself and this is how I function in the world, and they have a narrative about themselves and this is how they function in the world. It's really different when we actually start to move into a relationship with those narratives, right? I have a very specific narrative, they have a very specific narrative, it's clashing, but now we're moving into having a relationship. It doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. Maybe it's a partnership, like a business relationship. Maybe it's a relationship of, oh, I'm going to you every day to buy your strawberries and you have strawberries that I really enjoy. Power, dynamic, what is that saying? You know, sitting behind your father's office chair when you were little could feel like, oh, wow, I'm the most powerful person in the world, versus maybe when you get older and you see your father sitting behind that chair and you're having an argument with them, it's a completely different idea. Dynamic, what is that dynamic of things saying very calm, very easeful, or feeling like you're wired in because you are stuck or you're connected? That dynamic is connected. It's not maybe free, it's not easeful. So yeah, we're just adding layers to sort of some of this narrative we're building. Miles says they have computer fatigue. So it definitely feels like they're trying to escape. Well, Miles, I hope you're able to unplug very, very soon. And I wonder if there's like some sort of narrative there that is important, because if the dynamic is something's pulling you back and you're pulling away, what is that relationship? What is that dynamic, that push and pull? Because sometimes you like being plugged into those headphones, I'm assuming. Sometimes you like playing on your wherever you are, or listening to music or hanging out. But right now, the dynamic is not easeful, it's strained. Mitchell says, this is going back to the office dynamic. Their father would be sitting in his chair near his computers and he'd still held some power, even sitting there. Yeah, just because someone's sitting down and you're standing up does not mean that you're less powerful or more powerful. If there can be sort of that authority of someone sitting down, we think of things like kings in a chair. It seems to me like you sort of had this relationship to your father that even when he was sitting in his chair, there was some sort of authority sort of moving in that dynamic way from him into your brain or into your sort of receptors. Mother was usually spaced out apart, and there would be 2 dogs. We have 2 new characters in this space, and the conversation would feel calm around each day's happening. I love that. I grew up in a family of 6 kids. We were not calm. So again, this idea of like easeful, calm relationship and dynamic versus something that can feel really tense and moving in and out of that. Give me 1 second. We are gonna move on to our last slide. And that slide is gonna say dance with the chair. Now, we did not start with this for a reason. Again, this is a yes and space. Go ahead and interpret it in any way you want. It doesn't have to be anything that you don't feel comfortable with. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my video, and I'm gonna give us a moment of silence. All right, and if this sort of makes you feel a little apprehensive, you can just shake out your hands, maybe shake out your legs, shake out your shoulders, move your neck around, and just go ahead and interpret dance with the chair in any way you would like. Everyone is different. No one has to be the same. This is really up to your interpretation, just like all the other ones before. Whatever you feel comes to you. And go ahead and close your eyes and just continue the dance you're doing, the movement you're doing, the way your body is sort of in the space, and start to think about your narrative. What is your narrative personally? Use those sensories to help inform you, maybe your breath. What is the narrative of someone else in the space, if you have someone else, or if you want to create someone else being in the space with you? What is the power dynamic? What is the relationship you have with your dance partner, if you have one, like the chair, or if you've chosen something else as your dance partner? And just go ahead and create that narrative. And go ahead and take 2 deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth. Last one, in through your nose, out through your mouth, and gently bring yourself to stillness. Go ahead and gently open up your eyes. All right, so I'm gonna share a little bit about what I did. Again, I'd never want to share something with and then ask someone to do it as if I wasn't willing to do it. So I was dancing with my chair. So I didn't really say like, maybe this had to be so dancey. So I really just sat on the chair and I just bounced up and down. And then I started moving my hands. And I was real agitated. My narrative was I was a little agitated because I knew that I had to go get a shot from the doctor, but I didn't want to get a shot from the doctor. And so I was really worried about getting a shot. I was just sort of waiting and getting a little anxious. And then someone came in and said, "You don't have to get a shot anymore." And I was like, oh, and I relaxed. I was so relieved. Whew. Just sort of was like, and I took in that moment. I was like, I don't have to get a shot. And then suddenly, yes, I don't have to get a shot. And I just got really celebratory and moving my arms around, and people were looking at me like I was crazy because before I just looked really anxious, but now, wow, I'm really relieved. So that was a little bit about the dance I did with the chair. Again, wasn't really what you would call a dance, but to me it was really an expression of movement of what I was feeling in that narrative. And if anyone would like to share, feel free to. We have the Q&A chat, and if anyone would like to share with their audio or their video, ask in the Q&A to be able to share, and then you'll be given the access to share. Laura would like to share. Laura, go ahead. Let us know when you have audio or video, and feel free to just chime in when you're ready.
Hi. Okay, so I have like, I don't know if you can see, but it's like an architect's chair.
Oh, I think you muted yourself. 1 second.
Okay, sorry. So I have a spinning chair, like an architect's stool. And my daughter, who is now 14, but one of her favorite things about the office is to come in here and spin on it. So I took advantage of this prompt as an excuse of dancing with the chair to actually walk around and do a dance spinning with it. And yes, and my class, in our last class on Tuesday, we talked about a slam poem that was about that experience of childhood wonder and surprise and how children play. They just get to do those things. And I realized that I don't let myself play in my office. So I'm going to start doing that.
Yeah. I'm even noticing just the way you're laughing. You seem a little more like relieved that you were even able to express that movement in a space that maybe has a completely different dynamic for you, a space that you're usually like a little more focused or a little more rigid. You've allowed yourself to sort of relax in it.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Kaden says, while dancing with their chair and questioning their decisions, their attention went to some imagined voyeurs that saw them through the window. Oh, so what did those voyeurs think, Kaden? Take that a step further. What was going on in those voyeurs' minds? What you were playing and dancing and having the time of your life, what were they thinking? It doesn't have to be negative either. They could be like, wow, that person's having a lot of fun. I want to join them. It could be like, maybe they're aliens and they've never seen a human before. So they started, pulling out their notebooks and taking data. I don't know. Eloise said, I'm in my car on a nice day, windows down. The glamorous life. Love that song. And I'm singing and dancing like a fool. Then I noticed that everyone in the bus that pulled alongside me is looking at me and I don't care. Yes. What does that say about that dynamic, Eloise? Because you've let go of that feeling of not caring. So it doesn't matter that there's a lot of people looking at you. Maybe the bus is even slightly higher than your car and people are looking down on you. There's something really specific about the architecture of people looking down on someone, right? And seeing you sort of in your own entertainment.
That was an actual memory that it was a total flashback. And what made it okay was that the reactions of people on the bus were a mixture of what's she doing and a couple of thumbs up. So, and I'm sure I'm not the only fool who got caught doing that shit. And that's good.
I love it. I think so much we think about stories or impactful narratives needing to be this like intense, serious, important item. But some of the best creations in immersive interactive storytelling, some of the best apps, some of the best research is about enjoyment. It's about lightheartedness. It's about play. It's about people being able to express themselves. And actually, your power in that moment, especially when people were cheering you on or approving or saying like, oh, wow, you go. Your power in that moment exuded and people felt attracted to that power. Not in a bad way. Again, this word power, we're not saying this is like, oh, someone's abusing power. We're saying like you were creating a certain power by expressing, and that power was attracting people's attention in the bus, and then even creating a behavior change because some people actually called out to you, or some people like sort of cheered you on, or some people maybe gave you a thumbs up. You created a behavior change for them, and that's great. That's a transformational experience within your transformational experience. So sort of this ripple effect. And that's to me the magic of stories. Stories connect us and create a ripple effect. Imagine that first time that first story was ever told versus the billionth time that story was told, as it was passed through different people and different generations and different whispers and different ways of telling the story, really softly or very loud. And that to me is really exciting. And I love that. I love that your joy spread joy. I'm just gonna make sure I'm not missing anything. Mitchell was stretching, high school cross country runner. I also ran cross country, as does most of my siblings, and they recalled being among other rivals and teammates, and the stress of the competition, and also the elation of looking up a long hill at the start line. Yeah. So seeing something ahead, how is that making you feel? The watchers surrounding the teams, yeah, cheering you on, right? Audiences are so important to narrative, whether they are audiences within the narrative or audiences you're serving for the narrative. And the cowbells and the rattling, so that sound. My mom and I were talking the other night about how smells and sounds bring us back to those memories. So Mitchell, it feels to me, when I hear those cowbell sounds, brings me right back to those cross-country days. Well, we're getting to the end of our workshop. I just kind of want to tie it in, since I don't want to cause anyone to have to be on Zoom any longer than they absolutely have to, especially because I know I have students in my audience. Just some other themes I want to layer onto the themes that we've been speaking about. Accessibility is so important, especially when we're talking about creating and building experiences for people. Again, if this is VR, AR, if this is a phone app, thinking about the people that you're trying to serve and how are you making it accessible to a broad audience or a specific audience, especially as we move into the realm of technology that uses our body more, or technology that's so visual. How are we making sure that those technologies are being optimized for people with visual impairment or different physical abilities or different hearing capabilities? Comfortability. This is a great example. If I had started with, hi folks, we're going to be dancing with our chairs, get ready for a dance class, I don't think anyone would still be here. But I'm glad you all were able to stay through this whole workshop. And so comfortability, thinking about how comfortable is your audience. The minute they put on the VR headset, suddenly the goblin's attacking them. I don't know if that's the best way to set up a narrative, set up the way that you want your audience to feel comfortable to then battle the goblin, right? Sort of like game design 101. We don't necessarily have someone go and defeat the boss within the first level. We sort of slowly but surely make them feel comfortable with maneuvers like jump, walk, attack, duck. And then as they sort of move into the mastery of those different features, we then give them the boss to defeat. Same idea here. I started you positioning on the chair, positioning next to the chair, positioning near the chair, and then dance with the chair. So sort of building up your resources and your tools and making you feel comfortable with what you were about to do. Safety container, I think that's always important. We sort of set that up with the yes and statement that we made today. I think even if you have the most amazing, intense experience, you want to make sure your audience feels safe, because if they don't feel safe, then they can't fully enjoy it. Even if they're letting themselves go to skydive, usually right before you skydive, you go through some safety training and you set yourself up with someone you feel safe as your skydiving instructor, and then you're ready to skydive. Same idea with audiences. And perspective. I think perspective is a really important part that we miss in a lot of day-to-day design, products, apps, marketing. We really need to think about perspective. What are we saying about this? How are we saying about this? And what are the different perspectives people could have about this? And that should be a very important part of team building, team experiences, as productions, as well as what we put out into the world. For example, my perspective of seeing this as a DJ and me being down below, well, what if I was the DJ? What kind of perspective would that give me if I was trying to make music? And what if the audience below me was not receptive? What if they were just sitting there? What if they were on their phones? What if they were falling asleep? What different perspective does that give? Especially, I think, with things like customer testing or audience sort of marketing. Think about the different perspectives that we can have. This might seem really amazing to me, but maybe not so amazing to somebody else. And that's just as valid. Again, none of this is good or bad. It's just clashing in the world of narratives like molecules. So that's the end of the workshop. We have about 3 minutes left. This is my information. Feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to learn more about what I do. I'm more than happy to give this workshop in many other places. I think it's a really fun way to sort of just get to know people. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Michaela. Does anyone have any last minute questions? Great. Well, we appreciate you participating today, and we would like to thank Michaela for joining us and walking us through that great workshop. If you, Susan posted the links to the Hubs room if people want to go over there and continue conversations. Otherwise, the next session will start in a little while. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Don't forget to dance with your chairs when you're feeling like everything is hopeless, especially if you have finals or quizzes or anything like that. Thank you for having me.